Hi everyone, it's Kelly here. Welcome to my channel if this is your first time. Welcome back if you've been before. Lovely to have you either way. On this channel we talk books. Today we are wrapping up my reading for the month of February. Today I'm recording this on Saturday the 28th, so it is the last day. I feel pretty confident I'm not going to finish any more books tonight. So yeah, I just thought I'd let you know all about the books that I finished in Feb. So I finished 5 books, but don't get too excited. A lot of them are quite small, and the reason for that is that early on in the month I participated in a readathon where we were deliberately reading books that were small. So yeah, I read 4 books during that. Then I had a real slump, and then I read a book, finished a book, which if you watched my last video, which was a vlog, a reading vlog, you will have seen me finish and give a very brief review of that book. So we'll just touch on that one today. But let's start with the book that I finished first, and that was my first 5-star read of the year. Woohoo! And that was my first Frederik Backman book, And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer. This is a book where we have an elderly character, a grandfather, sitting with his grandson in what we come to discover is a sort of like a place within his mind where, and this man has some form of dementia, and he is losing his memories. And this story is from his point of view, but it takes place over some time and kind of explores the ways in which he remembers things, and like the little touchstones that help him to remember certain things and that sort of thing. It started off a little bit cheesy, will say, and I was like, I had my questions, but as it went on, I had a good cathartic cry by the end of this book, because it was just really beautiful, the way in which the author talked about or described the ways in which this man's family just sort of got alongside him and walked with him through this period of his life. And, you know, I've had family members who have had Alzheimer's and dementia. It's tough. It's really, really tough as they begin to lose memory of you and to, interact with you in ways that are different from what they have done in other parts of their lives. And that's hard to be with somebody in that time. But I just thought it was so beautiful the way that Frederik Backman just sort of talks about, you know, that gentle, like, sitting with and doing that walk alongside a family member. I'm tearing up just thinking about it. It was really beautiful. Yeah, it's through the tough days. It was really real and very beautiful. So I really highly recommend this one, though keep in mind the content of the book and be in the headspace where you're okay to be reading about that, thinking about it, and crying about it. So that was my experience with that one. So happy to have read it. Really enjoyed it. That was my first Frederik Backman, as I said. So I have a few other books of his on my shelf, so I'm looking forward to diving into those at some point as well. So yeah, I really, really liked his writing style. I should say this also was translated. Let me just grab the translator's name for you. It was translated by Alice Menzies. So yeah, that was just a little novella, nice and short. Let me tell you how many pages. 76, so not even 100 pages. It was a very, very readable. The next one that I picked up was a poetry collection called And Then She Ate Him by Tom Denbigh. This is a book that I've had kicking around for a little while, so I was really glad to get to it finally. Yeah, it's been languishing on my shelf, so I'm pleased that I managed to read it. This was a really surprising poetry collection. It was queer, it was a bit cheeky at times, sometimes quite cheeky, devilish, some may say. And also there were some poems that were quite deep and thoughtful as well. So it was, it kind of spanned quite a lot of different moods and topics throughout. So yeah, I really enjoyed reading this one, but I would say this is not the type of poetry that I usually prefer. So it's not a collection that spoke to me particularly deeply, but I did find it an enjoyable read, and I gave it 3.5 stars. The next book I picked up was this very, very tiny little penguin modern classic, and it's called On Violence by Hannah Arendt. This was interesting. It was an interesting read. Basically, she's talking about the role of violence in human history, but also she's talking about the nature of it, talking about how violence interacts with our political systems and so on as well. And there were definitely some interesting ideas in here, ... but also there was racism in here, which kind of undermines and cancels out the reasonable arguments that you're making when you don't feel that they apply to black people, for example. So yeah, I gave this 3 stars. I'm glad that I read it. I'm glad that because again, this is another one that's been sitting on my shelves for some time, so I'm glad to have gotten it done. And for the most part, it was fine. But yeah, those elements really were disappointing, I guess. And even though this was written in a different time, when you're making a philosophical argument about something, but you can't see the gigantic blind spot that you have, where you think your theory, it's not intersectional, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And it is at times openly racist. So that really puts a dampener on the rest of the arguments therein. Anyway, the less said about that, the better. So yeah, as I said, I gave it 3 stars. It was mostly okay, but those other things just really didn't work and were not good. Next collection of poetry that I read, however, was really good. It's called Rock Flight by Hasib Hourani. And Hasib Hourani is a Palestinian Australian. And so this was a really powerful... Now, I said it was a collection. Technically, it's not. He conceives of it as being a book-length poem. But it's in parts, and it is an allegory of Israel's occupation of Palestine. Some elements of this that I really appreciated. At the beginning of the book, there was a little blurb that introduces the text, and it really gives some very helpful contextual information for understanding what you're about to read in the poems. So that was super helpful. And then also gave some references as well. So that was also helpful. But then there were also footnotes as well. So when particular things were mentioned, there was like a little footnote at the bottom so that you could understand the context even more. And I really appreciated that. I don't think it would necessarily work for all poetry, but I think in this case it was very helpful. So I really appreciated that it was there. So just thinking about the poems themselves, I thought the writing was great, and it gave me perspective to consider the ways in which Australian-born Palestinians end up very detached from their homeland and not able to meaningfully exist on the lands of their ancestors. He's talking at times about property that his grandmother owned, and that when she died, nobody in his family was able to inherit that property, and just the little things like that, and ways in which you might connect with you know, your relatives and ancestors, and how that can really impact on your identity and your connection to your land and your home. So yeah, it was a very interesting perspective. I gave this 4 stars. I thought it was great, and I highly recommend. All right, and the last book. So those were the 4 books that I read for that little weekend where we were reading short books. Then I had a really big break and didn't finish anything. I wasn't reading very much. And then if you saw my vlog, you will have seen that I had a vlog day, which was very helpful in kind of like pushing through that. And I was able to finish a book that I had started and had sort of just put aside. And that was 3 Apples Fell from the Sky by Narine Abgaryan. And this one was also translated, let me just find the name of the translator, by Lisa C Hayden. This was really great. I really enjoyed it. So this was a book set in a very quaint, very isolated Armenian village. And all of the people who live in this village are very old. Well, relatively old. There's no young families. There's no kids around. And, you know, that is because of a variety of reasons. But we follow a woman at the beginning of the book, and we also follow some other people as we go along. But I kind of think of her as being the main character of this book. And she and some of these other residents are sort of reflecting on their past, their lives, people who have been part of the village who have passed on, you know, events that have happened in the village's history and so on. But also this woman and other people as well sort of get a second chance at life. Like they're older people for whom you might think, okay, well, that's done. Like they've made their choices. They're where they are. But yeah, there's a sort of a second chance romance situation that goes on here, which I really loved. The characters were very complex characters. They weren't perfect. They weren't always fully 100% good. I thought they were very three-dimensional in that way. But there was also a lot of lightness in the writing and hope, despite some quite dark things occurring within the story. So yeah, and also there was like this sort of humor that like bubbled along under the surface as well. And it was very, very readable, very enjoyable. And I gave this one 4 stars. So those were my books. I finished the 5. That brings me up to a total of finishing 10 books so far this year. Here they are. A little tiny stack, despite the fact that there are 5 books here, because so many of them were so small. But I'm really pleased that I was able to get these ones read. I'm so pleased that I've had a 5-star read for the year, the first one, so that's great. So even though it's been a little bit on the slump side of things in terms of my reading this month, I think even despite that, it has been quite a successful reading month. Even though it was a bit patchy. So yes, I hope that you've enjoyed this video. That's it for today, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye.